Welcome to Safeguarding Through Design. My name is Chakib Labidi. I'm the founder of UX Playground, and I'm very excited to have all of you joining us for another insightful event. Today we have invited the Kindred Design team. We have Chris, Jon, and also we have Tomas, who later will share their learnings and insights, how they work, their approach. And we have Jas, who is from the UX Playground team, who will be the co-host. We're gonna tell you a little bit about what to expect this evening. After this welcome and the introduction, we're gonna do the proposition. That's basically the part where Chris and his team will tell us more about the opportunities and challenges of designing in an environment where it's all about gambling, and with that comes certain business opportunities and challenges when it comes to providing a service like that. It will be interesting then in the Q&A part of this event to elaborate on that and maybe exchange a few of your ideas and thoughts on this topic with the design team. I hand over to you, Chris.
Well, thank you, Chakib, and obviously thank you for having us here today and letting us share a little bit about Kindred Group as a whole and what we're trying to do from a business point of view. My name is Chris, so for those that don't know me, I know there's a few familiar faces, I think, in the audience, but I currently head up the product design function here at Kindred Group. I, as an individual, have kind of worked across different industries, so insurance to gifts to publishing to now, more recently, obviously gambling. Varied in terms of my background. What we wanted to do was initially start in the proper UX sense with the problem. And I imagine some of you will be familiar with this problem in terms of whether you've seen like the news in the last kind of year or so, because it's becoming a little bit more pertinent in the industry. This headline in some degrees is not specifically uncommon. We see it quite a lot in the news these days, and it's probably become more of a problem in the last probably several years with the rise of online gambling. And it kind of, for us anyway, from a business point of view, it kind of highlights the scale of the challenge that we face, because I mean, from a customer perspective, obviously it's not great, and we need to protect our customers. And the problem we have at the moment is that gambling in general only appears in the news in a negative context. So when something has gone badly wrong and an individual has not only kind of gambled away their potential life savings, but also borrowed money, or in very extreme cases, turn to other forms of even crime, stealing, to feed their addiction. I mean, headlines like this, of course, impact us from a business point of view, but it's not just us, it's kind of the wider gambling industry as well that needs to do better in this instance in terms of protecting its customers. So the reason we wanted to share this headline with you today is because it highlights the main problem we have. It's our responsibility, not just as Kindred Group, but also within the UX team here to help fix this problem. So safeguarding through design, which is what we're all here for. And the crux of this is obviously on the back of that problem. I myself will touch on Kindred Group as a whole, the background behind it and the ambition we have as a company as we try to improve and kind of make it more sustainable. Jon will then take you through at a high level kind of the process that we undertake to deliver solutions to our customers, and also highlight a couple of kind of key examples that we've worked on from a business point of view in the last kind of couple of years. And then Tomas lastly will give insight into the scale challenge that we have. I'll go into a little bit more, but you'll see as the kind of presentation progresses. And then after that, as Chakib said, it would be good to get some questions from you guys who are here. We're always quite open in terms of how we try to answer these, so we'll do our best in terms of who we have. We are basically an online gambling operator, Kindred Group. We're 24 years old. We started out as a single brand, but we now very much live in a world of 9 brands. It's complex. Some of you probably would, I guess, have seen these brands around in terms of Unibet is our kind of global hero brand. If you're interested in sports, you may have seen it on some shirts, or you may have seen it in terms of sponsorships. And likewise, 32 Red as well is quite prominent in the UK market, at least. Brands such as bingo.com, more gaming related, more bingo related. People often don't really think about bingo as an actual form of gambling, but it is. Kindred as a whole is very much a global company. What we want to do is, well, what we have done, I should say, is we've expanded into a lot of different markets over the years, and some of our brands live in certain markets and others live in very specific markets and to target certain customer groups. But as you can imagine, it gets quite complex from a UX perspective and from a business point of view. When we're looking after so many brands and so many markets quite quickly, unless we actually kind of come up with scalable methods of producing customer-centric solutions, it can get very difficult. For example, how we support different brand and market wants and needs quickly and efficiently is kind of key to streamlining our own process in terms of making sure that we deliver sustainable solutions to our customer. A little bit more on the background and makeup of Kindred Group. So we have over 1,600 people and growing generally year on year these days. We have 62 nationalities, so very much a diverse company, which is great in a lot of ways, because obviously bringing different cultural backgrounds together to help us push towards kind of the solutions that we want from company point of view is a great thing. We serve over 30 million customers, 1.8 million active today. As mentioned in the previous slide, we have 9 brands spread across 22 different licenses. And it's complex in terms of each license requirement. The regulation that we need to adhere to in each market can be quite specific. As a UX team, we're spread across, I think, at least 5 or 6 offices as a whole. As a business, we've got 12 offices with kind of main hubs in London and Stockholm, and a few other kind of offices spread throughout Europe. I want to talk a little bit about our ambition as a company and where do we want to go. And I think the biggest thing to highlight is we're kind of dedicated to helping our customers gamble in a responsible and sustainable way. And the key part is the sustainable part of this. But we want to make sure that users are kind of gambling with their own financial constraints and in general lead the wider industry in another direction. Because in the past, gambling companies have kind of taken advantage potentially of customers. There's been things like VIP customers that have been highlighted from a kind of wider media perspective, whereas we want to spin that on its head a little bit. We want to ensure our customers are in control of their experience. And in a world where gambling is, I guess, easily accessible through online channels, ensure they gamble in a safe and responsible way. Obviously, we've had the rise of mobile, we've had the rise of kind of gambling online. It's a little bit different to kind of going into a shop and that whole experience. We have set ourselves a target from a business perspective, and our ambition is that 0% of our revenue from the platform is generated from harmful gambling by 2023. Essentially, we want to eradicate problem gambling and make it, I guess, more a source of entertainment, but we want to protect our customers and make sure that they get the support they need when they need it and through the right channels that work for them, because obviously different people have different needs and it does become quite complex quite quickly. Next, we will look at kind of how we look to design that. And I'll hand over to Jon, who will basically talk through a little bit at a high level in terms of the process that we go through from a kind of customer point of view, and then highlight a few examples as to what Kindred and the UX team within it have been working on in the last couple of years.
My name's Jon Kennedy. I'm a lead designer here at Kindred, and I'm going to give you some insight into our RG initiatives. But before we do that, I'm going to show you the Kindred design framework. What you can see here, this is our in-house design framework, but it isn't just a UX process. This is an end-to-end framework for product delivery within Kindred. So from left to right, our 3 diamonds represent the research phase, which helps us understand the problem. The solution phase, which helps us iterate and ideate through some of those. And then the delivery phase for design, delivery, and implementation. Certain you're familiar with a multitude of design processes. This is the framework flavor that Kindred has adopted. So I'm going to dive into something called PSEDS. This stands for Player Safety Early Detection System, which will directly support our ambition that 0% of our revenue from our platform is generated from harmful gambling by 2023. No other gambling operator is doing this, and it's a significant example of what Kindred is doing today to protect its customers. As it is now, PSEDS scans our customers' data by running it through a scoring system and assigning a risk score to each customer based mostly on financial activity. Moving forward, our focus will be moving towards behavioural risk and a more automated and efficient process of de-risking, which will help to increase real-time interventions as well as help increase operational efficiency for all of the supporting RG teams involved. However, real-time interventions are sensitive from a customer point of view. A lot of people don't like to admit they have a problem. So we need to build on this and understand how to help. On the flip side, 72% of detected customers on PSEDS go on to have a healthier behaviour and use more of the voluntary control tools we offer. PSEDS is based on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM. You can Google that if you want, it's actually quite interesting. It's a handbook used by healthcare professionals as the guide to the diagnosis of mental disorders. It contains descriptions, symptoms, and other criteria for diagnosing mental disorders. It also provides a common language for clinicians to communicate about their patients and establishes consistent and reliable diagnosis that can be used in the research of mental disorders. Kindred has used this as the baseline to create our own gambling-specific interpretation. This breaks out into the 9 criteria that you can see on the screen here. To help us better classify our customers, we've used complex cluster analysis And we've defined a need to focus only on the 2% at risk, as 98% of our customers enjoy a sustainable gambling experience. Each risk level will define how we affect the customer experience across all markets. So what we've got here is risk level 3. This is an automated on-site message which will suggest to the customer that we've noticed a recent change in their gaming behavior and offer some support through suggesting on-site articles and links to RG tools. Over 15,000 customers in 1 month were detected at this level. Next is risk level 2. Customers are assigned an affordability score by RG analysts. So if the score is higher than 50%, the customer will be contacted and we will request further proof to justify how they're able to afford such levels. Escalation can follow, and this process can differ per market. Over 8,000 customers in 1 month were detected at this level. And then finally, risk level 1. Now, given the extremely high risk of the customer in this scenario, deposits will be blocked automatically until we can contact the customer and manage to de-risk the situation. De-risking is in line with our existing case-by-case humanistic approach, focusing on CX engagement and retention. So just over 100 customers in 1 month were detected at this level. PSEDS aims to give the customer the data they need to make an informed decision at the right time. However, the real-time capability to instigate a dialogue with customers can be seen as intrusive and is perhaps badly received. Navigating through these perceptions is a balance we need to try and strike, which, given each person is unique, is a massive challenge. So we've done quite a lot of testing, but in 2 rounds of user testing in our research phase, we garnered some user feedback on generic multi-method RG interventions, such as being contacted via email, pop-up, SMS. A few examples are, I'm glad they did that. It was the right thing to do. I was worried they were going to block me, or I saw the email first. Initially, I thought it's not their business, and then I realized they're right. So with all that in mind, for the first phase of the real-time interventions, we have a version 2.1 of on-site messaging, which shows a very generic message when the customer is flagged as having a change in their gaming activity. We aim to improve on this with fully automated real-time interventions in 2.2 that will be more targeted, offering access to accurate content and specific tools based on the 9 criteria and the associated risk levels. So just for the RG tools now, so on top of the PSEDS, we've got our online on-site tools. They're in place to help our customers across all of our brands. For example, we have reality checks, deposit limits, loss limits, self-exclusions, timeouts. We're always looking for ways to improve these and make them easier for our customers to use. There are many projects underway which support the prominence of these tools across our experiences, ensuring customers are aware of the tools and how to use them. Some markets are heavily regulated and customers must set up their RG tools to not only support them in being a responsible gambler, but also ensure that the Kindred brands are fully compliant. That's all from me. And I'm going to hand you over to Thomas now, who's going to talk in more detail about scalability.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Thomas. I've been working on Kindred in the past 3 years, currently as a lead product designer. I'll talk a little bit more about how we scale what we've seen so far. So as Jon had mentioned, some markets are more regulated than others. We also have different products and they have different popularity across all of our markets. On top of that, we have multiple brands, some of them operating on the same markets, but some are not. And this together creates an incredibly complex environment that require an immense effort in order to build and maintain this on case by case. So in order to be able to support our customers across all brands and have enough resource to research, test, and introduce new tools, we need to scale our operations. So here we can see on the screen an example of something that's pretty straightforward. This is one of our smaller brands, Auto Casino. It's operating only in Finland. And it's, again, pretty straightforward thing. One market, one brand, one product. But then we need to throw into the mix another brand, Maria Casino, very popular in the Nordics, operates in 7 markets, including Finland, which is basically same market as Auto. Now we need to cater for our customer needs across 6 markets and 2 more products, but let's say that's still manageable, which leads us to our ultimate beast, the Unibet. So Unibet operates across 4 additional markets, 2 more continents and 3 more products. Unibet itself is a challenge to manage, and combined with 9 more brands is manageable only by leveraging our multi-brand system. So by doing that, we can easily design a master solution for our internal brand called Vanilla and create brand or market specific variant based on the requirements we have, with just a fraction of an effort comparing what we would need to if we do this on case by case for every brand and market. Plus, it helps us to ensure both quality and consistency of our solutions, which is always a nice plus. But what does it mean to take leverage of that multi-brand system? So here is a real life example. A while ago, we've been asked by Dutch regulator to introduce there's what we call internally RG bar that would provide more responsible gaming information tools to customers, and it needs to be displayed at all times. So we start looking into this, and while looking into this, another regulator came to us and asked us to introduce very similar thing, this time in Germany. So we started getting into both and actually decided it makes sense to work on both and base them on the same thing. But then we realized, hang on, we have something similar already in Sweden and Denmark, and then also in the US, which is a very specific market because it's not only different as a country, but each and every state in the US has slightly different regulation needs. What we done is we actually tried to understand what our current solutions do, and we found a couple of problems we have there. For example, our casino customers on mobile devices had issues with playing full screen games when they have this different bars on different markets as they have different height. Our other brands had issues with accessibility on the background color and so on. So we asked the team to map out the requirements on all markets and create single solution that can have multiple variants that can serve each market needs. And yeah, the outcome is on the screen. Thanks to having same color mapping across all of our brands, we can ensure just by setting this background color once, it's going to be accessible across all of the markets and all of the brands. And also we can tweak this, update this. We can support any of new regulatory needs or expand into new markets very easily, as we do have this very scalable base for this. I appreciate this example is rather small, but it's a great showcase of what we can achieve with scale. It was built on what we call primitives, but we are creating whole pages based on reusable patterns. Out of them, we can pull out our RG tool that can work cross-market or cross-brand, but also multiple other tools based on these patterns. So in this example, you can see a master version of RG tool with embedded branding already applied. When we link this to the right content, it can be actually turned into multiple RG tools that helps protect our customers from harm from gambling, such as a cool off, which is used to take a break for those that need it in order to stay top of the things, or even self-exclusion for those that already have serious gambling problem and they really need to stop. As we said it earlier in the presentation, our goal is to generate zero revenue from harm from gambling. We're still in the beginning of this journey, but we already have some amazing tools that help us to protect our customers, and we can build them and deploy them on scale. Back to Chris for last few words.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of insight at a high level in terms of, I guess, Kindred Group as a company, the problems we face as an operator within the gambling industry, and also how we're trying to solve some of these problems. Appreciate, obviously, we can go into some of these kind of level of detail that maybe we didn't have a chance to do today, but we're very happy to kind of expand on some of these examples if people are kind of individually interested. But yeah, as Thomas alluded to, obviously today we don't have all the answers from a company point of view. We're kind of on this journey that we're going through towards kind of 0% of our revenue kind of. So it's something that we as a business need to do more on, and it's something we as a UX team as well need to kind of make sure that we're really building into our process. That is the kind of end of our presentation, and I can hand back to Jas.
Yeah, awesome. So what we'll do is probably start off with what are the key considerations when designing solutions that help users to adopt a more healthy gambling behavior.
I mean, obviously thinking about that first diamond in the triple diamond process that we have and the research phase, and very much at that point in the process, we're looking at kind of discovering insights that can help steer the design direction. And part of that is talking to our customers as well. I mean, I know the responsible gaming team in the business do have a lot of data behind kind of what our customers are doing from a behavioural point of view. We also have a customer services team who engage with our customers kind of on the phone in terms of, you know, if they've had experiences problem gambling. So those guys also have some valuable insights that we can take into the design process. So I would say it's very much about the first stage in the triple diamond and discovering and understanding what the customer problem is, and then how we can go about solving that problem. I don't know, John, whether you want to jump on that and add anything to that.
Nothing mega. I think you've covered it there. You know, it's just the sheer volume of insights that we currently have in-house is quite phenomenal, to be honest. You know, there's a hell of a lot of experienced teams. especially with the RGS teams in-house, who know the customers a lot closer than we could ever. So we've got to take that into account as part of that research phase. It is super important to make sure that we fully understand the problem before we push forward.
A problem gambler has a certain emotional state. How do you take this into account when user testing? How do you prepare for this state of mind?
Brilliant question. It's completely on point, because obviously if you're a candidate and you're on usertesting.com and you get posted this test you can take part in, and you've got the task and you immediately got to jump into like, I'm an enraged customer because they blocked my account. It's not the same as actually living in the shoes of, being the person who's actually part of that. It's a great question. I haven't got the answer to it, but that's why we tap up the insights. That's why we use the research phase to get as much information as we can from the existing internal teams to at least understand how we can approach any kind of research, any kind of usability testing, any kind of testing at all. So at least we can frame it in the right way. Will we get the right emotional response from the customer? Probably not. But the RGS team have that close touch point with the customers themselves, so they have that one-to-one relationship. So we kind of learn through that. We don't necessarily, as a UX team, have that immediate contact with those customers.
It is a good question, and it's an interesting one, because obviously how we design from a process point of view, not just a Kindred Group, but as a collective, as a whole, like we're getting better from a UX perspective in terms of like collecting customer data, making sure that we're testing our designs with users. But it's probably almost impossible to replicate, I guess, how a problem gambler might be feeling in that emotional state with the user testing tools we have. I mean, we use usertesting.com and UserZoom from a kind of user testing or design testing perspective, but to really dig into those insights, it's probably things that are live, and then customers in real life context would give us the feedback we need to really determine whether a design solution is correct or not.
The next one that's been voted is Demetrius here, so one of our regulars. So do people intend to I'm assuming, exclude here from your services without intervention? And if yes, what is the percentage of those people?
I can answer that. Yes, they do, but I don't have the percentages to hand. Self-exclusion is a metric that I think the RGS team aren't really keen on using that as the industry standard metric, is that somebody has a gambling problem because they self-excluded. So that's why we're taking steps to move away from the financial element of this and move more into the behavioural side of that. So it's not a very easy one to answer, but the straight question is, I don't have the percentage at the moment, but people do self-exclude.
But what we do as well is, when customers sign up to one of the Kindred Group brands, is we can put kind of loss limits on their account automatically. So by the time, if they've lost a certain amount and they can't afford it, there'd be some kind of marker on their account, and then we'd intervene from a customer point of view, have conversations with the guys, make sure that if they are kind of gambling irresponsibly and they can't afford it, then we would essentially block them. So there are kind of other tools there that are available to try and mitigate that risk initially, because a customer choosing to self-exclude themselves can sometimes be one of the latter things in the process.
With the negative image of gambling and the current demand for product designers, do you struggle with hire?
Thomas, do you want to jump in that one? You can answer the question.
I can jump in this one, as I do have quite recent experience with this. Yes, it's a challenge. I'm not sure if it's because we are gambling. We don't have any proof of that. Obviously, we try to ask people around these things, but we don't have anything really solid in hand to say just because we are gambling, we struggle to hire people. We have an office in very competitive places, London, Stockholm. We are competing with likes of Spotify and so on. So obviously it's very hard to get good talent in these places. I wouldn't say necessarily gambling is that issue for us.
How do you know the fine line between someone who loves gambling and someone who is addicted to it?
That probably ties into some of the PSEDS stuff, John.
PSEDS, yeah, the early detection system. So like I said, at the moment, it's what we're moving away from, the financial side of evaluating the customer's behaviour to more behavioural. So the more behavioural starts to bring about the different levels of the 9 criteria that I showed there. It's easier to grade the customer's behaviour. That fine line sits in those criteria. So whether they're chasing losses or there's lots of other. But that's where it sits, and that knowledge sits with the RGS team, who are obviously a lot closer to that data. But yes, there is a way of being able to pull that out, and hopefully with tools like PSEDS, we can get that real-time intervention before there's an addiction, in theory, and hopefully in practice.
Do you find people are more or less risk averse depending on the country? And how do you adapt to that?
That's a good question, and probably a tricky one to answer in terms of from our perspective today. I mean, I imagine, yes, I think there are different kind of countries will have different attitudes toward gambling. I mean, we have been opening up, for example, in the US in the last year or so, and there is very much a demand from a sports point of view. In terms of the more or less risk averse, in terms of the data, not sure to hand, but it's something that we could potentially look at and then kind of take away and look at, and I guess kind of share with you at a later point.
Cool. Hope that's answered your question, Diane. We've got someone who wants to join in. We've got Dimitris.
Hello, guys, again. Thank you very much for your presentation, guys. It's very interesting. It's quite a big issue here in Greece. I'm from Greece, and it's very interesting that that you are trying to have this kind of approach. So I can imagine that you must be working closely with psychologists, therapists, and maybe a medical team or something like this. I guess that somehow you implement these guys in the design process. Is that correct? And how do you do that?
We're not currently doing that at the moment, pure UX terms. Where that's being handled is actually in the RGS team, which is Responsible Gaming Team. And there is a whole initiative around that. So it's much further into the business. So, you know, we don't in the UX team had interviews or integrate with the therapists or psychologists. I would like that from a purely personal point of view as part of the overall end-to-end process. And one day we may get there. But at the moment, the UX team isn't doing that, but the wider business is taking part in that.
So I think these things would be pulled into the insights gathering in terms of the first stage, the triple diamond. So, I mean, we do have like an insights team in the business. So we've got user research within the UX team kind of embedded in, and we've got kind of data analytics teams and the CX team in the house as well, to look at kind of the key aspects from a data point of view that we can collect. So what we'll generally do from a UX point of view is work with the different insights teams and see what parts of the business have insights for any given piece of work. So in the context of kind of responsible gaming and making sure that we're kind of safeguarding our customers, there would be conversations with the RG team. And if there's any kind of insights that we've gathered from either psychologists or therapists, they would be pulled into the process. We have in the past as well had kind of people come in and do talks as well, in terms of, I can't remember exactly what the organization is called, but essentially a kind of charity-based organization that kind of talks to people who have had historic gambling issues and whatnot. So we have had people like that come in and do talks at Kindred Group and try to understand it more from a customer point of view, because obviously it's a slippery slope. And going back to one of the other questions earlier, around kind of how we intervene, is I think what we find sometimes is that quite quickly they can spiral. So before you can even detect it, unless the system steps in and actually makes the call on kind of and looking based on their kind of betting behavior, that whole process can happen quite quickly. So we do try to engage with customers, but yeah, as Jon said, when we're talking about the UX process today, we don't directly kind of talk to the psychologists and therapists, which would be really good to do. But like every other kind of, I guess, larger organization and business, trying to get the alignment across all the teams to push forward with kind of solving problems at the same time can sometimes be a challenge. So it would be bringing that into it somehow, which is a really good point, because it's something that we should look at as a UX team more.
So I think we have another country-related question here. So are you considering moving to the African continent? Because gambling is the new gold here in Africa. So is that a consideration?
I mean, I guess I probably can't answer that from a business point of view. I mean, I don't think it's in any short-term plan at the moment. I mean, a lot of what is happening at the moment from a broader industry point of view is kind of it's opening up more in the US. So there is a bit more of a US focus, which is fairly common across other gambling companies. But I mean, sometimes we can pivot quite quickly. So obviously we learn about certain things from a UX perspective in terms of how the company is planning on expanding into different markets. But sometimes it can kind of hit us, I guess, and surprise us in terms of what's next. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe at some point in time we would look to expand into Africa, but I don't think today is the day that we'll do that.
How do you ensure good usability versus playability?
Obviously, we are not developing games. We have, or we are not really. If you're talking about casino, we are not building them, and are coming from our partners and different game providers. So what we are trying to do is to provide the best journey to the game, to ensure that customers could choose the games in the best possible way and the games they like. So that's as much as we can do. The whole playability part of that, it's slightly out of our hands. We can do some stuff around, which we try to do. Also provide some more information, easy access to help from every screen, as we've seen in the example from presentation, the top bar. On some markets, we also have direct link to help for customers from game screens. So yeah, the whole playability bit is out of our hands. So we are focusing on the usability.
For the design team, I do have a question. So apart from the requirements that are set by the regulators, what are the steps that your team is looking into beyond the regulations?
It's an interesting one to find space between the regulations. When I say that, it's like these regulations coming thick and fast. Some of them have a major impact on different markets. And it's finding the space to be able to look into innovation. Now, Thomas touched on it with a couple of the, what we're doing through the design system, through scalability. But equally, from our point of view, we are pushing the business to improve the tools, improve the access to the tools, improve, just generally the better customer experience across the board. But it is just finding the space to innovate between all the regulatory pressures. And there's only going to be more of these. More markets are going to be regulated. So yeah, it's quite complex in Kindred, as far as I've got on that one.
There's maybe not that much space to be extremely innovative or reinvent the wheel here, but having the set of the tools that regulators ask you to have is one thing, but how you implement them, how you build them, and how you make sure that customers can interact with them and can understand them and can take leverage of them is the other thing. And this is the things we want to excel with. So we want to make sure that even though we might have the same tools as other competitors, ours will be easy to use, easy to understand, and really all of our customers can get the most value of that.
We do from Kindred Group is we have an experience office, and we have dedicated experiences that handle different parts of our key customer journeys. And one of those experiences is called Be in Control. And that experience is very much around looking after the customers, making sure that they have the right tools and support in place to make sure that they are gambling in a safe environment and they're not spiraling from a behavioral point of view. So there is an experience there that's positioned in a way that we hopefully in time can be more proactive with it. As Jon said, we do suffer from different regulators coming to us at different points in time, and then having to work with the regulators to make sure that we're adhering to requirements. So we do look for win-win situations, and Thomas's example in terms of the reusable pattern that we can use across different markets supports the scalability. So from a UX point of view, we'll always look for opportunities to improve. Obviously in a true iterative fashion, it does depend on certain deadlines and technical architecture that we have in place today. But there's very much the whole reason why we have the experiences set up how we have them, and we have experience owners who very much should be responsible for driving the experience in the right direction. So it's those guys over time that will take more responsibility to be more proactive once we've got the scalability in place to give us the space.
Well, I hope this answers your question, Chakib.
It does. I mean, at the same time, I was wondering, are you part of a consortium or some kind of group that is actually looking industry-wide to set some of the standards? Because regulators is one part, but of course you can propose some solution that could work for the industry.
Yes, we do. We talk to a lot of the other gambling operators, and we do want to work together with them, because another trend that we found as well in terms of responsible gaming is it's all very well that, for example, one company can exclude a customer if their betting behavior is getting more and more regular. But then there's nothing stopping, or in some markets, there's nothing stopping that customer going to a competitor, open an account, and then just continuing that spiral. So we talk a lot to our competitors, and we do try to work with them in terms of making sure that what we're doing fits into a holistic and global picture. As Thomas shared, or as Jon shared earlier, and we are the first company to introduce this whole player safety detection system. A lot of the other companies are looking at other methods, I think, as well, to try and improve this. But it's a case of working together and talking to each other. And I know there's been a number of scenarios where we do communicate quite openly with each other to try and combat some of these wider industry problems, because what we don't want to do is have customers bouncing from one place to the other, and the end result is still the same for the customer. And regardless of who you work for and whatnot, then all of these negative headlines that we get from a gambling point of view, it's an industry problem, and it's something that we'll only solve collectively. So it is very much part of our RG strategy working with other companies and trying to understand what they're doing. The RG team that we've got internally, I think, can probably answer a few more detailed questions on that. But yeah, very much aware of that happening.
Fantastic, thank you. This is the official end. So have a lovely evening and let's stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chakib. Thanks for having us, and thanks, guys.
Cheers.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.